Welcome everyone to today's talk, A Healthy Mindset for Business After a Natural Disaster. My name is Lisa Richards and I'm the Business and Visitor Economy Officer at Byron Shire Council. Today's talk is funded by the Commonwealth under the Disaster Recovery Arrangements. Byron Shire Council acknowledges the traditional owners of this land, the Arakwal people, the Minjibul people and the Widjabul people of the Bundjalung Nation, and pay our respects to elders past and present. This is a 20-minute discussion with psychologist Michaela Killips to support local businesses with mental health recovery after a natural disaster. Michaela is a principal psychologist at Mullumbimby Psychology and has more than a decade's experience providing mental health support to clients across the lifespan. Michaela also has had a successful career in the corporate arena, working and consulting across a broad range of industries. Welcome, Michaela.
Thank you, Lisa.
Michaela, can you tell a little of your personal and professional experience with natural disasters, and if you have any helpful frameworks in how to view mental health in the context of a natural disaster?
Yeah, sure. So I think it's helpful when we're thinking about natural disasters just to realise that this is they're complex global problems that, whilst we've recently been inundated in the Byron Shire, of course, this is something going on all the time, all around the globe, unfortunately. And with environmental change, it's something that we need to be aware of as it will continue. In terms of my personal experience, I was actually in Sri Lanka the year that the tsunamis came through. Luckily, my timing was out, thankfully, but I got to see videos sent to me of places where I was standing, literally large ships inside, like the Gaul cricket stadium, crazy stuff. And I also lived out near Moree for many years when they had quite severe drought. So whilst not a classic kind of sudden onset in terms of natural disaster, certainly something that was felt by the entire community out there. And of course, recently we've gone through the floods and lost my business and also had damage to my home. So I'm very much feeling what everyone's feeling at the moment, very much in there with everyone. In terms of just explaining a little bit about natural disaster in a mental health context, I've got a couple of slides that I think could be useful. So just bear with me a sec and I will bring up a screen share, just a sec. Okay, you able to see that one okay?
I can.
Yep. So, yeah, just in terms of common characteristics of natural disaster, if I go back. Yep, I think I need to stay on that slide. So in terms of common characteristics, we've got things like sudden onset. So with the exception of drought, which can come on more slowly, typically they are very sudden. They are unpredictable, they're uncontrolled. There's that huge magnitude of destruction. We have literally human lives that have been lost in our area and tremendous amount of suffering. And they greatly exceed our coping capacity. Individually and as an entire community. So that's just to give that background. And then in terms of phases of a disaster and the mental health needs, I find this quite a useful model just in terms of understanding where we're up to. So initially, you can see the red little explosion there. And so when we have that disaster early on, they call it the heroic phase. So I've heard some amazing stories of what people have been doing in our local community, going around in boats, going and rescuing people, making sure our homeless community are looked after. There's been some real heroes in our community, including our business owners. And then it talks about a honeymoon phase, which is not exactly a typical honeymoon, but this idea that support's coming, the government's going to help us, and we're going to have all these amazing packages and everyone's going to make it better and there's not going to be any ongoing after effects. And of course, the army came in, we had all sorts of support, but it doesn't make everything better. There's ongoing impacts that we have and that continues. And so we're kind of in the disillusionment phase at the moment, I think, for a lot of us, where a lot of people are still waiting for insurance claims to have works finished, or they don't even have insurance and wondering how they're financially going to go on. So there's a lot of tough times at the moment, and you'll see those extra little bottom points with asterisks. So those points, they're kind of anniversary points. And I think also when we have heavy rainfall as well, that just still makes it more fresh. It is nice to know that it doesn't stay as bad as what it is for a lot of us at the moment. Things are going to ease at some stage in the future. So we've got to keep riding through this disillusionment so we can start to go into restoration. So I hope that makes sense. Okay. So I think that's, most of what I wanted to share for that one.
Great. And what are some common reactions to a natural disaster, and how will business owners know when to get help for their mental health?
Yeah. So I think one of the really common reactions, and certainly something I personally felt a lot of, is grief. So it's and depending then on whether you were in your home at the time, obviously you can have more traumatic reactions as well. And just coming back to grief for a moment. So grief can be a very intense emotion, and it's directly proportionate to the severity, duration and intensity of what you've felt. It's good to know how it differs from trauma. So when you're having, from depression, when you're having depression, it's often more of that flat affect. When you're having grief, it's a very painful, unfortunately, emotion, and it's very vivid. So, and it can come in waves and come when you least expect it. So I think it's helpful to know what that is and what it looks like. I'll just share with you another screen here. So in terms of some other common reactions, feeling overwhelmed is completely normal. Feeling numb, detached, not able to focus, not being able to plan ahead. We talked about the tearfulness. Having intrusive memories or bad dreams can be normal with sleep difficulties, and having this constant questioning of, if I'd done this, if I had have done that. So really doubting ourselves and replaying events over and trying to invent different outcomes. So there's things that I think, if only I'd done this or moved that. But here we are. It's like coming and bringing yourself back to the present moment. And so I think it's helpful to know what's getting beyond common reactions, so you know when you need to start to get some professional help. So things like having excessive guilt about things that were said or done. And I know our team were working in the recovery centre, and a really common theme of people coming in was that guilt and survivor guilt. So worrying about our cousins down in Lismore, for example, and other communities where the flood waters were higher. So feeling that guilt. Frequently being easily startled. So that can be a sign of a traumatic reaction kicking in. Thoughts of self-harm, thoughts of ending your life. And just wanted to say that can be quite a normal reaction for someone who has lost, can't find hope. The pain is too high and the level of connection is not good. So when we're dealing with those situations, we need to support people to reduce their pain, increase their hope and increase their levels of connection. So those things can dramatically reduce suicidal ideation and desire for suicide. It's interesting that we can actually make a little formula out of that. And not that it's simple to change those three things, but by changing those three things, we can dramatically change how people feel, which is good. Loss of hope or interest in the future, avoiding things that bring back memories, feeling overwhelming fear for no obvious reason, and also panic attack symptoms. So panic attack symptoms are when we start to feel really panicked, and panic comes on very quickly. So it's usually within 10 minutes We can go from feeling somewhat calm to having trouble breathing, possibly feeling like we're having a heart attack, crying uncontrollably. That can all be signs of panic. People often will present to emergency department thinking that they're having a heart attack. And once the ECG's been done, it's like, no, your heart looks completely fine. Obviously, always rule out biological causes. Don't just think, oh, it's just panic. Anything going on with the heart, you need to get your medical stuff checked out first. But then assuming that's been ruled out, you can have all sorts of things going on that are completely not life-threatening at all, but it's just the body's way of going, I'm really worried, this feels like a really scary situation. So I think that's all I had for, oh yeah, one more. And then I guess now that we're that little bit further down the track from those initial reactions, what people might be experiencing, and certainly some business owners that I've talked to more recently, for some people, there's some anxiety going on, there can be depression, and there can also be some post-traumatic stress. So talking with people who've developed things like water phobias, which is completely understandable. So making things like showering difficult. Talking to business owners who are struggling with depression, noticing that they're drinking quite a lot in the night when they didn't drink a lot previously. And anxiety. So it's that heightened sense where you just got to keep moving on the go all of the time. And just wanted to mention that these are all treatable conditions. So one of the challenges is we tend to kind of think, oh, well, this is to be expected. I've been through something really hard. I just have to put up with it and keep going. It's like, no, don't keep doing more of the same. That tends to lead to more spiraling and more troubles. It's like, no, it's if it's getting to this kind of point, now's the time to reach out and get some more professional support. So thank you. Yeah.
So what techniques or tips do you have for business owners either struggling themselves with mental health or wanting information to support family, friends, or work colleagues or staff?
Yeah. So in terms of tips, I think something that we can do ourselves, there's a technique called psychological first aid. So that's really helpful early on in the early stages, but we can also still use those principles now that we're further down the track. So just like when you have a physical wound, you know, and particularly if you've got nasty floodwaters in there, you don't just leave it. If there's a cut and just go, oh, she'll be right, it'll heal up of its own accord. It's like, no, if we know there's something a bit festy, we got to sort it, we got to put antibacterial cream, we got to clean it out, got to bandage it, look after it. And the mind is the same. We have to look after our brains, which then help, you know, feed the whole body. So things like getting enough sleep is really helpful. So if I have someone come in for therapy and their sleep is really dysregulated and maybe it's just got worse and worse and they're only getting a couple of hours sleep a night, and the rest of their life is falling apart, the very first thing I'll do is focus on the sleep. Because if we can get the sleep back in, then the mind starts to come. It's like a computer, you know, working off, you know, only about 2% of capacity. If we can get the whole computer working, I can be lazy then and people can heal themselves a lot of the time. So that's the aim, is to support people to support themselves. So sleep is really important. Eating well. I think what I used to be able to get away with eating when I was a bit younger, I can't get away with anymore. So times when I'm really busy and there's a lot on, I have to make sure I'm eating healthy foods. I still have my treats, but need to make sure I'm resourcing my body well. You need to make sure you're doing, you know, some kind of exercise as well. So those I know they sound basic, we talk about them all the time, but they make a really big difference. And I'll show you, just in terms of psychological first aid, I'll just show you some principles that are, there we go, linked to that. So in terms of psychological first aid, you know, we've got safety at the top. So when you're initially in the throes of natural disaster, step one is safety. So be it physical safety, but we're also talking about emotional safety, financial safety, all of those things. So it's really hard to do anything beyond that. You need safety first. And providing calmness is really helpful. So having people around you that are supportive and calm, which leads us to connectedness. So this is for you looking after yourself, but also for others as well. There's no point trying to instill huge amounts of fear in people. It's just the nervous system needs to rest. And with the connectedness, it's really important to have people around you that care about you and that you trust. That can be beloved pets, family, friends, whomever. There's a lot of research around connectedness. So there was a study, for example, with the tsunami in Sri Lanka, where one particular person, their family all died in the tsunami. They lost their home, and they tried to be tough and rebuild their lives by themselves. Another person in the same situation who reached out, engaged the whole community, got support, and the mental health outcomes were very different. So we're social creatures, and counter to what particularly rural men have been taught, where you've got to be tough and do it by yourself. The research does not support that. We need to be there for each other. It talks about self-efficacy and group efficacy. So this is around having a sense that you can do this. So days when I get up and it's like, oh my gosh, the list is just too big, and I'm trying to do my normal job and I'm trying to manage all these other things relating to the flood, which is still going on. If I can remind myself of tough times that I've been through in the past, and don't remind myself of all of the mistakes and messy things that have gone along. It's time to remind myself of the things that I've done well, of my achievements, and it's time to remind myself of the people around me and who I rely on, and the times they've been there, and the strength of our community. That's the stuff that's really important. And I found that the more adversity I've been through, the more I've really relied on that. That can make a big difference to outcome. Which leads me to hope. So I'm not going to sit around watching really depressing Netflix shows or engaging in things that are going to be deflating. I need to have inspiration around me. I want to hear about people who've overcome adversity. I want to surround myself with that kind of positivity, because it's all about resourcing myself as much as possible and supporting others to resource themselves. So I think that's some of the things that I wanted to share with you on that one. Yeah.
Right. And what strategies or techniques have you seen work for business owners to support their recovery from severe weather event?
Yeah, in terms of strategies that can help. I think there's a range of things that can help our recovery. So one of them is just listening to the body. So actually stopping and just being still. So if you actually just take a breath from the busyness, and this doesn't work for everyone. Some people have no idea what I'm talking about when I do this, and don't worry, if it's not for you, that's fine. But for lots of people, you can kind of just tune in, notice in the chest, notice in the tummy, what kind of feelings are coming up, and then you just kind of say, what is it I need? And actually asking yourself. And so sometimes you might go, I'm actually really tired. I just want to go have some rest. Or actually feel lonely. I really need to go and connect with people. Or I'm feeling content and I just want to savor this moment. Whatever it is. So I encourage people to kind of tune in to their own needs. I think that's really helpful. There's also, just to contradict what I just said, there's also a technique called opposite action that we use in dialectical behaviour therapy. And so with opposite action, I guess we're listening to the need, but then in terms of behaviour, sometimes if you're racing and you're going super fast, it's kind of clocking. If people are saying, gosh, you're really busy, or gosh, you're talking quickly, they're cues that maybe there's a bit of anxiety going on, and maybe it's helpful to actually do the opposite. So behaviourally, instead of going really fast, can you practice just sitting? It's really painful if you're elevated to practice that. It feels really counterintuitive because anxiety wants you to just keep moving and going really fast. But it can be very helpful just to stop and be still. And likewise, if you've kind of gone into that more catatonic space where it's really hard to get out of bed, it's really hard to move, the depression's kind of really sinking in as opposed to anxiety driving the ship, then opposite action is to get moving. And so with opposite action, there's some interesting trauma techniques that you can apply more generally to depression as well. So one of the first things we learn to do as babies is eye movement. And so when we're coming out of a trauma space, is actually just practicing. If I can't move the body, it's actually just practicing moving eyes, which helps you turn your head. And then as you start to turn your head, then you can start to gently, move your arms around. And it's like, okay, well, maybe I can go from moving my arms, maybe I can stand up, and maybe I'll just go and wash some dishes, or, just very gently starting to get the body moving. Because then if we can keep our routine going as much as possible, if we can still go to work, assuming we've got the workplace to go to, can keep doing routine, that really helps us. We're creatures of routine. So I think that's some of the things, that I've seen people find helpful. Oh, and one other thing is we just all have different coping strategies. So some people tend to go into that anxiety, hyper arousal with the nervous system. So, post-flood, some people I've been talking to, they were really busy. They were moving lots of stuff, making sure it was high. Other people are kind of going more into collapse and they can't really move. And it's just learning that that's actually not conscious. That's pre-programmed into our brain. Our brain perceives a threat, and then it will decide for us whether it thinks we have capacity to do something, or it thinks we should just play dead, wait, hopefully the threat will pass by, the tiger will go, and we'll be okay. You can do some work to rewire your natural coping mechanisms. So, for example, people who go into collapse, things like martial arts, practicing moving the body, that can help us with the rewiring. But it's just have some compassion for whatever your nervous system is pre-programmed to do. That's been helpful for people.
And what is your advice to business owners about preparedness for severe weather events in the context of mental health?
Yeah. So in terms of being prepared, I think it's literally the things that, the resources I know that council provide in terms of preparedness. There's a whole lot of resources out there on how to prepare. And we kind of have two main strategies in mental health for coping. Well, healthy and unhealthy, but in terms of healthy coping strategies, you can do problem solving or you can do acceptance. It's kind of like, as fancy as psychology is, that's what we're limited to. So in terms of problem solving, that's where you actually get your disaster management plans in place. You check your insurance levels. I've talked to people who've put coatings or sheetings in the building so that they can just sweep out next time if there's another flood. So it's kind of like doing all the practical things that you can do, spend time doing that, because that helps the nervous system knowing that you've done everything practical that you can do. Like for me, learning how to read bomb radars better, because I kind of see the basic weather and I go, I don't know how to interpret that properly. So that's on my list I'd like to be more competent in reading a bomb radar. So then, you know, that's one side on the practical and the problem solving, and then you've got on the acceptance side. I think we need to know what's inside and outside of our control. So I'll just show you something to help with that. So circle of influence, this has been adapted from Stephen Covey's work on the 7 habits of highly effective people. So it's this idea that there are certain things within our control, certain things within our influence, other things that might deeply concern us, but we have very little control over. So whether or not another flood comes is of deep concern to any of us who've had our homes or businesses impacted. How much we can control the weather, it's pretty limited. You know, you can choose to relocate, you can choose a whole range of things that you can maybe have within your control, but we have limited control. And if you spend all of your time in that circle of concern, then that's where anxiety hits. So we need to come back to the circle of control. That's where you can have an impact. So I think that can be helpful to look at. I'm just trying to think if there's anything else I wanted to add for that one. Yep, no, I think that's about it for that one. Yeah.
Okay. And where can business owners go if they want more information or want to seek professional support from themselves or someone else who is struggling?
Yeah. Yeah. So in terms of more information, you know, we're inundated with lots of support options, but yet it's hard to actually get a psychologist in the Northern Rivers. So it's a tricky situation. If someone would like some counselling for themselves, I think one of the best options available at the moment is with Connect to Wellbeing. They're offering 10 free sessions for anyone who's been flood affected. So I'll just find a little slide with some information that for you, just a sec. So this one here, in terms of Connect to Wellbeing, you can see there's a 1300 number. So I think that is that's really useful because you don't even need a GP referral. You can ring up that number. They will ask you all about what happened. So just being a bit prepared for that to happen. And then they can link you in with a psychologist in your area to access free support, which is great. And then also, I think friends and family, it's important to talk about the good and the bad of what's happening with friends and family. And they're our frontline support. For anyone who doesn't know, if you're suffering with anxiety, depression, you can talk to your GP and get a mental health care plan. Those are available. And victim services. So that's more for people who've been victims of crime, but often that can be a good starting place if that's happened to you. Veterans, Open Arms is for family members of veterans. These are all places that provide counselling. You've got Lifeline. There's a suicide callback service. We've got places like Beyond Blue. I've just got a couple more things. I just thought I'd just put this up just for a brief pause so people can kind of have a think about themselves and their own emotional fuel tank. And, you know, full is when it's really easy to give out. You're feeling quite generous in yourself, feeling buoyant. And then the empty is more feeling stressed, feeling burnt out at work, having compassion fatigue, maybe some trauma or depression, anxiety. So it's just good to notice where you're at with that. So as I mentioned, Connect to Wellbeing. Ahead for Business is quite good. That's a website where you can go and do a free mental health checkup for business owners and check your stress levels. So that's all confidential. I like that. Anyone who's struggling with suicidality, Beyond Now. That's an app that you can get on your phone for your family members or friends, done by Beyond Blue, which is a great little app, and you can put in even photos of things that are really special, letters people have written you to kind of remind you in those darker times. It's a great app. We've got some fact sheets. So these are places you can go for some more practical support for both adults and kids. They've got some really helpful fact sheets. I put down Head to Health. That's the government website it's just got tons of resources in there for pretty much anything mental health related. Couple more things you can have a look at in terms of info sheets. And yes, I think that was about all I had.
Michaela, thank you for your time today. Everyone, this interview will also be available on Council's website. And if you would like to receive a fireproof and waterproof protection chest to hold important documents valued at $69, please be one of the first 14 Byron Shire businesses to email your business name, email, and best contact number to economicdevelopment@byron.nsw.gov.au. Thank you.
Thank you.